Hello, masibhoti samawethu sinamkele kusiqondiso sethu sale veki senkqubo Yilungelo Lakho, it's your right. Igama lamkele kuSiphiwo Nzawumbi njengesiqhelo siphethe umba uchaphazela wena. Masikhumbuze ke nawe ungakwazi ukuthi abathi xaxheba kwingxoxo yethu namhlanje ngokusala umnqobo phaya kwinombolo yethu 0117146919 or 6918. Usenokuvakalisa ke nezimvo zakho ngokusithumelela email phaya ku consumer@sabc.co.za. You can also touch base on our Facebook and Twitter page @Yilungelo Lakho. Good afternoon. Winter is upon us, and so is the dreaded reality of possible power cuts as the demand for electricity grows, and this is expected to place consumers and businesses under pressure. But the hardest hit during this winter will be the estimated 10 million South Africans who have no access to electricity. Perhaps the solution to the country's energy challenges may be affordable, safe alternative such as solar and environmentally friendly sources of energy. Let's quickly have a look at the insert we've put together for you today.
Abantu abaningi lapha eMzansi Afrika sebeke bazithola behanjelwa ugesi phecelezi i-load shedding kanye nosomabhizinisi imbala seke basebenzela ebumnyameni. Amamiliyoni babantu abanganawo ugesi lapha eMzansi Afrika futhi njengoba ubusika sebusemnyango izinga lokuhamba kwagesi lingenzeka libuye futhi. Ungqongqoshe we-Public Enterprise uMnumzane Malusi Gigaba uthi enye yezimbangela zokuswaleka kukagesi zidalwa abantu abatshontsha izintambo zikagesi noma ke izinyokanyoka.
Ezindaweni zethu kuyingxaki enkulu esijongene nayo. Into ebalulekile esiyenzayo ngalonto kukumobilize i-communities, imiphakathi ukuthi abantu bazi ngobungozi bokweba umbani kanjalo nokuthi iyiphi ingxaki okusilethela yona.
Inkampani yaseKapa isisungule i-portable solar power ukuze isize labo abangenawo ugesi kakhulukazi ezindaweni ezisemaphandleni kanye nalabo abafuna ukonga ugesi kuze wonke umuntu abe nobusika obufudumele. Uthalane uthi le solar power ingenza ngcono kakhulu izimpilo zabantu lapha eMzansi Afrika futhi amandla iwathola elangeni nje kuphela.
The way it works is we get power from the sun, and then that gets converted and it becomes power which we can use for your daily appliances at home or things that use a small amount of power like lights, fans. We can even power a small DC TV.
Uthi le solar power ayilungele nje abantu basemaphandleni abangenawo ugesi kodwa nalabo abahlala emadolobheni abafuna ukwehlisa isikweletu sikagesi.
It's great for like I said, the rural communities, people without power. It's amazing for them. But our Switch to Portable Solar Power campaign covers everybody. So you don't have to just be in rural settlements without power. Like you said, it can be to save power in your home. You can power these devices inside your house, so you don't have to use your electricity at home. Like with Outdoor Warehouse, you can use it with camping, hiking. It's like you felt, it wasn't heavy, so you can take it with you anywhere. It's portable.
Ngaphandle nje kwagesi izakhamuzi eziningi lapha eMzansi Afrika zisebenzisa wona amasola, oparafini, amagesi, amakhandlela, bebase kanye nezinkuni. Kanti lezi zinto ziyingozi kakhulu uma uzishiya ungasiqaphelanga futhi ezinye zazo ziyimbangela yokusha kwemijondolo eminingi lapho khona abantu belahlekelwa yikho konke abanakho. Bathi kulobusika lingehla izinga lokuhamba kukagesi futhi nabantu bangawuthola ugesi owanele uma nje bengalandela lemigomo.
Asicimeni ngesilalelo esikhome ngabe ke esicela ukuthi sicime izinto lezi esingayisebenzisi ke eyisebenzisa ugesi izinto ezifana nama-dryer, ama-pool pump umbukeli cha kuyabanda akekho umuntu obhukudayo cishe i-pool pump ke umbukeli isicishe namagiza kanjalo nezibani ke emagumbini okanye emakamelweni ke lawo ke esingawasebenzisa uma ngabe sibambisene hayi singayinqoba ke lempi.
Kwinhlangano ye-Africa Utility Week ebibanjelwe eKapa kulona leli sonto abaka-Eskom bacele abantu balapha eMzansi Afrika njengoba sekuzongena ubusika ukuthi besebenzise ugesi ngendlela enobukhali kuze wonke umuntu ezoba nobusika obufudumele. Unompumelelo Mthethwa, Yilungelo Lakho, eGoli.
And now to further discuss these power outages in South Africa and the challenges of facing an alternative solution consumers have to safe, affordable and sustainable energy during this winter season, let's welcome our guests today in the studio. Masamkele Ukulu Pasiwe, yena ovela kwa Eskom, and from our Cape Town studios, we're also joined by Ryan Steyler. He's an energy expert and product developer. We'll be crossing to him shortly after the break. Kulu Maskwamgele. Yes. Now, let's talk about the outages we're currently having in the country. Can we perhaps expect the 2008 spate of our country and the white cards we had throughout South Africa, which led to a number of stinging criticism from the private sector, civilians and so forth?
Thanks a lot for the opportunities, Pio. From the start, I would like to make mention that currently we do not have any power or load shedding, as people call it, load shedding at the moment. What we may have in certain places would be sort of localized power interruptions. So these things would be caused maybe by sort of cable theft and things like that. But from our side as Eskom, we have said and we continue to say that there's no plan at all for this winter and the other winters to come to go on load shedding. So we will do everything in our power to ensure that we keep the lights on for this period and beyond. And one of the things, or some of the things that we are putting in place is that we are building our coal-fired power stations in Lephalale and Witbank. There's also a hydro scheme that we are also building at Drakensberg in KwaZulu-Natal. So these and other measures will ensure that from the end of this year going forward, we will have some kind of adequate power to ensure that we keep the lights on.
Okay. Godoge, in doses from Ndabeni, it's completely different from what you're saying. We know that UNERSA was expected to give you at least 16% of the tariffs, and then instead NASA nafumana 8%. Ingabalondo ichaphazele kanjani uququzelela nokulungiselela ubusika kungqongophala kombane?
Yeah, ngiyabonga. Essentially, the 8% that UNERSA had given us, obviously, it has affected us in terms of how much money we can accumulate, and some of the programs that we wanted to effect, some of them we cannot do because of the monies that we do not have. But from our side, and we also want to correct some of the perceptions that have been sort of made in the media that we are now going to add to NERSA to sort of seek for another tariff increase. What Eskom is doing is sort of a normal process that we usually do, where NERSA would give us a tariff increase, and then every year we go back to NERSA to do what we call a recalculation of the tariff over the year. So this is where we are at the moment, and NERSA will make its determination towards the sometime soon, hopefully before the end of the year, as to where we stand. But from our side as Eskom, we have and continue to be transparent in terms of electricity. We will make sure and that we do not go back to load shedding. And I would also like to sort of say to our people as people that load shedding is not something that Eskom would want to do. And hopefully, abantu nabo, most of the time they say that load shedding yaba disorganized and things like that, which is something that we take to heart. But what we are saying, Tina, as a company is, if you do not want load shedding, as much as we do not want load shedding as a company, we must all work together to make sure that we do not go back to load shedding. And some of the basic things that people can do, as in summary, would be like now, it's winter. Abantu abaningi abaswimi. The people who have a swimming pool endlane, you switch off swimming pool pumps, things like amagiza. During the day, abantu abaningi abekho basemsebenzini, you switch off that amagiza, and then you switch it back on late in the evening. So amanzi wakho would not, when we switch it off during the day, would not be sort of cold, mawufika endlane. Okay. So those are some of the small things that people can do to make a big difference.
All right. Let's talk about the 8%, the 8% that you are granted by UNERSA. Ingaba lonto ayizochaphazela indlela nenza ngayo ukuplana, especially because we're very much concerned sichaphazela kakhulu umba ka-2014 ukuba ingaba singa expecta i-power outages ezininzi, and especially kwicala lona nifuna iba niyithabathele nxaxheba ukuba nisixelele ukuba ingaba kuza kwenzekani, yintoni umbukela ngayilindela ngobusika?
Yeah, no, as we indicated, Tina, from our side, there's no plan to go on load shedding. Although we must say, though, that obviously the 8% that we got from NERSA has affected us in terms of how much money we can sort of generate or that we can accrue from the sales of our electricity. But we like to mention that our tariffs are part of the things that we get in terms of making sure that we have money. So, for example, we depend on our own reserves as a company from the sales that we have had before. So we do have our reserves. We also get a cash injection at times from the government, but we also get obviously from the tariffs. So our tariffs are not the thing that we are depending on for us to be able to do what we have to do. It will affect us indeed, but we are continuing with our program to raise money. We go to the local and international markets to get money that we need. And so far as we speak, we have sort of raised over 80% of what 80%. We need. Yeah, so we are good.
At least you're coming close to your target?
We are coming close to our target, and that's why we're saying that at the end of this year, the first unit of Medupi Power Station will be coming online.
All right. Well, you can join our discussion 0117146918 or 6919. Touch our Facebook page at Yilungelo Lakho as well. Maskasibele vengleni sishonga bakuthengiswa ntoni. Masibuya isiqhubeka nambesuphethe namhlanje. Welcome back, mbukeli sikhumbuze ke bana ungakwazi ukuthi abathenxaxheba kwingxoxo yethu namhlanje ngokusala umnxeba phaya ku 0117146918 or 6919. We'll also be taking your Facebook messages shortly, so keep those messages coming, and also you can take us on Twitter, hashtag you know the rhyme and how we roll. Well, before the break we were talking about the Kusile project, which you made mention of, which is based in Mpumalanga, and the Medupi Power Station as well. Maskenje sitete about the money as well. We know that 80 billion was the expected cost. Yes, you figure by 142 billion. CSNI, 100 billion. And then your Nyuka Medupi Power Project, yeah, 125 billion. Ingaba into nechaphazele okukunyuka kwemali.
Ama delays as people, just like when you're building your own house, sometimes if you take too long to start doing some of the things that you need to do, ama costs or ama products like maybe from cement and tiles and things like that, if you're building a house, our costs obviously will escalate. So Nati, as a result of the delays that we had previously, remember that when we started with the Medupi and Kusile, it took long, obviously, firstly, for us to get a decision. And when we got the decision to build, we had to raise the money because we did not have the cash ourselves. So that process obviously sort of resulted in us having a lot of delays and the cost going up.
Phambili phaya ubusiqala into okubana izitations esisebenzisayo zombane zezindala apha eSouth Africa. Ingaba yintoni ngaphandle nje kweMedupi le eseyithatha ixesha neKusile, zikhona ezinye izitations mhlawumbe nijonge uba nizakhe nizidistributed throughout the country?
So far, we have 3 projects, which is Medupi, Kusile, and Ingula. Ingula will be in KwaZulu-Natal. So between now and 2018, those are the 3 projects that we're working on. And anything beyond that, then e-government, through Department of Energy, will make a decision as to who is going to build and where the money will be coming from.
Okay. Okwangoku ke nisalinde uNelson nje ukuba ubutshilo ingaba amanye ezinye sources of income that perhaps or funding enijonge kuzo zeziphi esingathi mhlambe sichaphazele le decision enisafikela kuyo?
Tina, generally what we do, besides the tariffs and cash injection from the government and also our reserves, Tina, we go to the markets and raise our bonds. So just like every other company, we go there and people buy
fundraising.
Yes, and we fundraise. Those things have helped us. In fact, Manje, as we speak, Medupi, Kusile and Ingula, work is continuing there. So we don't necessarily have cash flow problems for building.
Okay.
So the only thing that we need is the balance of the 80% that we already have. So that's why we are confident that by the end of this year, the first unit of Medupi will be up and running. Okay,
let's quickly cross over to Ryan. When you're coming back, you're going to touch about some of the initiatives you have as ESCOM and in partnership with government and NERSAS. Also, are we going to, Ryan, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Okay, hi. Ryan, knowing that you're the product developer of energy and some of the alternatives we can use this winter, what are some of the findings you've heard upon your research about the power outages and the shortage of energy we have throughout the country?
Well, I think you've got a couple of alternatives to the fixed grid that ESCOM is supplying, and those would mainly be your hydro, wind, and lastly solar. Solar energy is certainly something that ESCOM is looking into. They are building solar farms in the Northern Cape. There are hydro farms, sorry, not hydro farms, but there is hydro technology being used, and there are wind farms currently being used in the Western Cape as well. So those technologies, in conjunction with the power supply from ESCOM, is starting to have a sort of more green energy impact on our system and our environment as well, which is obviously very positive. What's quite useful and what's quite good to know is there are a lot of communities that are living in wetlands, that are living under pylons at the moment, and it's basically impossible to run electricity cables to these communities. And what we found is that there is an alternative to get cheap, reliable energy to communities in a fairly rapid rate. And that's to look at things like portable power, portable solar power in particular, where you're able to actually provide families with lights, with basic power to watch TV, fans, all that sort of thing. So there are alternatives to Eskom's power delivery. They aren't expensive, and as I say, they are renewable and green at the same time, which is obviously great.
Okay, comparing South Africa to other countries, we know that this is basically a global trend, but other countries have come up with solutions.
Yes.
Would you say that we are more solution-driven, or we are slacking slightly behind as compared to other countries? And where would you rate us as compared to other countries as well?
Yeah, very good question. I know, for example, that when it comes to solar, Germany is definitely number one. They are the highest consumers of solar energy. America should be up in the sort of top 3 places. I believe they're about number 20 or so. So there are a lot of countries that should be focusing on green energy, which are not. And the other thing worth noting, of course, is that Europe, a country like Germany, for example, doesn't have a lot of sunlight. You compare it with certain states in America, or you compare it with Africa, we have an incredible amount of sunlight, which makes solar energy the obvious choice. It's far more efficient. It is renewable. The prices of both the PV panels, in other words, the solar panels and batteries, have come down substantially, actually, in the last few years. So the misconception that it's an expensive sort of system to set up, that myth also needs to be addressed. It's actually become very affordable. And again, particularly with the smaller solar units, you know, you have a 10 or 20 watt solar panel, you have a battery, and you have an inverter, and that's basically providing power to the masses very easily. It doesn't require installation. So where you have big power farms or solar farms, that's also fantastic. But that takes time to build. You know, it takes time to install on rooftops, etc. The application's excellent, and it's been proven throughout the world to be probably the most efficient and cost-effective way or alternative to normal electricity. So yeah, I think South Africa as a whole, we need to do a lot more. You know, we need to start investing in green energy. There need to be more departments, even in government, you know, who are focusing on green energy initiatives, who are injecting money into these initiatives, and who are supporting these initiatives, not only for the climate, but obviously also for the benefit of everybody else.
Okay. In your solution to curb this issue that is facing South Africa, have you partnered with any government institutions, or have you proposed, rather, a solution to the government entities?
Yes, I must say, you know, in the government's defense, the Department of Energy, for example, is looking into this. They are awarding, for example, tenders to smaller solar units to address the problem quickly, which is great. So you are starting to see the Department of Energy. We were invited actually by Eskom as well last week in Johannesburg to speak to their renewable energies department to discuss, you know, what our developments are as a business as well in terms of portable solar power. They're very interested as well in helping us to promote these alternative energy resources, obviously in conjunction with fixed power, but I think everybody's starting to see the picture that, you know, you can't rely on one source. You know, I've just heard that Eskom says we're going to have very few outages, if any, this winter. I hope so. That would be fantastic, and good luck with that. And yeah, the fact remains that there are areas of the community who don't have access to the grid in any case. So even if we had a stable energy supply, we're talking roughly 3 million households, average household of say 4 or 5 people. It's a lot of people who don't have access to electricity, and that's in South Africa alone. If you consider sub-Saharan Africa, roughly 575, 580 million people have no access to the grid.
All right.
Now, to run power supplies to these people is going to be virtually impossible. So you need an alternative. And that's, again, where we come back to either wind, hydro, or solar. Those are your 3 alternatives at this stage.
Just quickly hold it there, Ryan. We've got a caller on the line, Derek from the Eastern Cape. Derek, are you there?
Hello, bhuti kunjani?
Ndikhona kodwa kunjani mhlekazi?
Siyaphila ndoda enkulu. Ke bhuti ndithethe ngo-Eskom amalungelo ethu. Thina apha e-Eastern Cape kuloo ndawo kuse-Eliot entlanyana. Amalungelo kuthi ewe sindawo umbani kodwa siyanyaswa amalungelo bhuti. Into eyenzekayo asixelelwa xa umbani umka. Umbani usuke umke umbani. Singaxelelwanga njalo. Mhlawumbi ingabhexeshwanga ethivini okanye erediyweni. Kwindawo yase-Eliot Tlanyana from Phungula zonke zilandwa lapha bhuti.
Xa umka Derek. Xa umka umbane umka ixesha elingakanani?
Mhlawumbi umka ixesha elide bhuti.
Iveki mhlawumbi intsuku.
Hayi intsuku.
Niyawubhatala umbane?
Usuku uzawuxela ukuthi ixesha likhele uzomka umbane endaweni ethile.
Ningaxelelwa nina?
Singaxelelwa. Singaxelelwa naserediyweni nasekanye ethivini.
Okay.
Siyilalele bhuti.
Siyabulela kakhulu Derek. We're going to answer your question shortly. Khawuhlale nje bukele unomathotholo wakho sawuphendula umbuzo wakho. You basically heard what Derek was saying. Sorry, Bonako, rather. You basically heard what Derek was saying in the Eastern Cape, that in your initiatives to inform people, you do not inform some, especially in the rural outskirts, your Limpopos in the Eastern Cape. But we'll touch basically on that when we come back from the ad break. Remember that you can be part of our discussion by calling us 01171469118. You can also join our Facebook and Twitter page. We'll just run quickly for an ad break, and when we come back, we'll discuss more about this winter's power outages. Sinamukela kwakhona kwamawethu phambi kokuba sihlabele mgama ngengxoxo yethu nikhumbule ukuba nani ningakwazi uba nithabathe inxaxheba. Before the break, we had a caller from the Eastern Cape, Derek. Derek basically was telling us that people abantu abakho informed when there's going to be blackouts and load shedding. Why?
Yeah. No, thanks a lot for that question, Derek. Essentially, we like to clarify basically two things. The first one is 40% of South Africa's electricity is supplied directly by Eskom. The other 60%, which is the majority of the people and households in South Africa, is supplied by municipalities. As a result, maybe Derek can hopefully he can write directly to us as Eskom to clarify if he's an Eskom within Eskom supply area. But abantu generally, they confuse electricity suppliers in South Africa. Whenever people have electricity issues in their households, they think it is Eskom. Kanti, it happens most of the time is that they are supplied by municipalities. Tina, from our side as Eskom, whenever we are going to, and we don't just decide what we are going to disconnect people, we are going to switch off things and things like that. What we do most of the time is, whenever we're going to maybe do an upgrade on a certain substation or those kind of transformers and things like that, we tell people well in advance so that they can prepare and plan their lives around those things. But I can also add that in the Eastern Cape, especially during winter, we do have, and summer as well, we do have a lot of rains, which sometimes obviously affect the transmission lines that go to people, and as a result, they get impacted.
But shouldn't you be partnering with omasipala ukwenzela into yokubana abantu masithatha umzekelo womuntu ohleli phaa Eastern Cape okanye Limpopo abana access to the internet, or neither can they afford to call the stations that you're talking about? Yintoni ke niyenzayo ukwenzela into yokubana abantu bakwazi babe nendawo abangarepota kuyo?
I'm glad you raised that question, because we don't communicate necessarily with people using internet nezinye izinto. We actually physically go to radio stations that people listen to, and sometimes on TV, but mostly radio stations and newspapers in the communities, and tell people, inform people that these are the situations and this is what is going to happen on a particular day and time, so that people can prepare themselves in advance.
Okay, well, just remember that you can be part of our discussion by joining our Facebook page at Yilungelo Lakho. I'm just going to read some of your tweets and Facebook messages basically that you have sent us. We've got Dinky Prissy. Dinky Prissy says, let them come up with strategies to help in rural areas as the development is extreme. The supply is weak and easily affected by weather conditions, causing millions of households to be in the cold and darkness. That is Dinky, rather, in Stekspruit. We've got Cyril Zibuse Katini Jr. also says solar power is good because of no rent. Abongile Gift Majodina says people must be given electricity because candle is dangerous. Sibena Maibongwe, Malibongwe rather, Bele Manyonya, who says, Uba urhulumente angazama ukuba kubekho enye company eza kuvusela okanye ikazakuvelisa umbane ngaphandle kuka Eskom ngoba uEskom kuza kuthatha eminye emininzi iminyaka uqinisekisa ukuba wonke umuntu uyawufumana umbane kwaye lento yokucima kombane ithanda kuchaphazela abantu abangathathi intweni kube indawo zongxowa nkulu singafumani ingxaki. You hear that?
I did hear that, yeah.
And also, I like the fact that Prisky says that, Cyril says that solar power is good because of no rent. And we're going to touch briefly on that when we proceed and we talk to our studio guest who's on the other side. I see that we have another caller. Temba, are you on the line?
Yes,
our line's a bit bad. Hello, Temba?
Hello, yes, sir. I'm
Yes,
on the line.
all right. Kunjani mhlekazi, uthini umbuzo wakho?
Yeah, umbuzo wami ukuthi futhi sigijimile ngazo lento lezi zamasola saze saya nase-Thailand ne sizama ukuthi sithole alternative ngoba sinamaland la. What happens asazi ukuthi wenza ngoba ngathi surround endaweni eyi-1 sikhave into bathi solar farm.
Okay.
Bathi singene ku-big round, sangena ku-big round ne-solar farm. But i-solar farm yethu ayifani nama-solar park laba wenze Eastern Cape. One, it's high, it's about 4 meters high. That means you can plant ngaphansi kwama-solar, unlike u-solar park. When the grass grows, babulala utshani, hence babulala nothing can grow under a solar park. Whereas ku-solar farm, once create employment ngokwakha ama-solar panel ethu abe high, then ngaphansi sidonsa amanzi, then sikwazi nokufaka ama-plant. Any plant, you can plant anything, you can, whatever you can.
Temba, le greenhouse or the green planting, le initiative osixela ngayo ingaba iziswe ngubani ku-Eskom okanye nizenzeleni nani ngabahlali baloo ndawo?
No, thina sihambile sayofuna sisibhizi nje sigugula sahlala nabanye abelungu base-Thailand.
So yi-project enizenzele yona ningabahlali?
No, we've tried it in Northwest.
Okay.
As a company, a private company.
Oh, you are a supplying company?
No, we wanted to supply, but we wanted to ukudibana nabanye abantu ukuthi senze i-joint venture, the government nathi ne-Eskom.
Ingaba ninkqonkqozile ke kuminyango ka-Eskom nakarhulumente ukuba nifumane uncedo?
Akukho la esixesinayo ngakhona basithumela ku-big round. So our disadvantage is that the solar farm is longer than the solar park. So mabasifaka ku-big round sibhida nabantu abayenza like basibhidise nabantu abayenza imoto encinci thina senze imoto high.
Okay.
I-advantage yethu we do them both, the solar panel phezulu senze electricity then phansi sitshale. So wasithumela siyena ku-agriculture. Akukho we've tried kusho ukuthi i-project yaseNorthwest besangabe ikhikhe up last year, but when you bid fanele silingana nabantu bama-solar park.
Okay. Temba, siyabulela kakhulu kubukela mabonakude wakho sizama basiphendula umbuzo wakho asize nesisombululo from our official from Eskom. So basically, Temba, they've had this project which is very nicely prepared and with a good initiative also. I mean, it's a good initiative, I would say, for a community member to come up with this as suppliers. Kodwa ke bathi bazile kuni. Khange bafumana uncedo, banqonqozile, akhange nibavulele.
Ngiyabonga Siphiwe, and also to Butemba as well. Butemba, you'll remember ukuthi the program here, renewable energy in South Africa, is run by the Department of Energy. So Tina, SESCOM, what we do is people would do their bits and the Department of Energy will run the project. Once everything has been finalized, then Bona, they'll come to us as ESCOM to say what the department has given us a license and everything is up and running. So Bona, what they do is to connect to our transmission lines. So Tina, we come in at the very last resort. So because this is not our project, it's a government-led project, and Bona, Tina Seba connect us so that they can sell electricity to us. So essentially what government has done is they're making things very relatively easy for them. What you want to do, what you have to do, raise funds and whatever, do the project. Then once you are done, you can come to ESCOM and sign an agreement as to how long we agree that you will send or sell electricity to us, so that we can, most of the guys are selling electricity to us, or we have this long-term agreement for 25 years where they sell electricity to ESCOM and then we send it to their customers.
All right, let's quickly cross over to Ryan. Ryan, are you still on the line in Cape Town?
I am. Yes,
Hi, Ryan.
I am.
We just had a caller who was basically telling us about a private initiative they came up with as the residents of Northwest. And solar energy being basically this main source of energy, or the source that they rather propose to redistribute the energy. And you basically touched on that earlier on. Can you expand how solar will basically be a solution in the future, or just to help us in this winter?
Yes, certainly. In terms of solar farms, I picked up on a little bit of what the gentleman was saying. They are obviously very, very useful for a number of reasons. You can actually, for example, have certain plants underneath the solar panels. So at certain times of day, the solar panels protect plants that are sensitive to high amounts of light. For example, there are a lot of factories in China who have solar panels on all the rooftops. Underneath, they actually grow vegetables and various other plants to feed the workers in the factory, for example. So these solar farms not only provide energy, but they also provide shade, and they can also provide, in conjunction with certain vegetables and things, they can provide a very healthy food source. And of course, once a plant is built, there's no more costs. So basically, you're going to get, in a sense, energy for free. And that's the beauty about solar. Once the farm is up, you know, once you have a device that is solarized, you basically have energy for free. So the tariffs can go up from ESCOM, various other things can happen. Your energy after the initial investment is free. And I think that's quite important for, you know, for the public to know. So yes, it might be an initial investment, but at the end of the day, what's going to happen is that you are not dependent on any grid. You're not dependent on coal getting wet. You're not dependent on cables being stolen. You're not dependent on any of these other factors. You're basically self-sufficient, and you're going to start saving money because, yes, you're going to have 8% this year. ESCOM is asking for a little bit more, and so we go. So we have 8% compounded the following year, the following year, the following year. So if you do the maths, what's going to happen is you're going to have a very, very high electricity bill next year, and it's just going to continue to compound. So the alternative is you look at an energy source like solar. Well, once you put your investment in, particularly if you compare it to a higher cost of electricity, you're actually going to save yourself a lot of money, you know, simply by using solar, particularly now.
All right. Well, let's just hold it to that point and quickly run for an ad break. When we come back, we're going to expand basically on this solar issue and the solutions that we're coming up with the expert and the ESCOM representative who have in studio. We also want to hear some of the solutions you're coming up with. Perhaps in your community you already have an alternative source of energy. Please tell us. You can also touch dial on 011 6918 or 6919. We'll be right back after this. Well, welcome back. You're still watching Yilungelo Lakho. It's your right, coming live right here on SABC 1 Mzansi for sure. And remember, your participation line is 011 714 6918 and 6919. You can also email us at consumer@sabc.co.za. Before the break, we had Ryan, who was basically telling us about the solar energy and how good it is and how helpful it is basically for consumers who cannot afford this electricity hikes. You were mentioning some very interesting points before the break, or actually during the break, about how well and how successful this project has been in some parts of South Africa. Just touch briefly on that and tell us more.
Thanks a lot, Spiwe. Basically, what the government has been saying over the years is that for people who are living in rural areas, it's very expensive for us as a company and government as well to connect them to the national grid. So what the government has been suggesting is that people in rural areas should be connected using solar programs that the government has initiated. And we have seen a very good progress in that regard. Obviously, many more people still need to be connected, but we are seeing some very good moves on that one. And I also wanted to mention that we as ESCOM support the renewable energy program as a whole within South Africa. In ourselves as a company, we are also building our own 2 power stations. The one is it's a solar power station which will be based in the Northern Cape, and the other is a wind farm project in the Western Cape. So generally, in the next few years, I'm sure South Africa, especially when you go to the countryside, places like Northern Cape and maybe parts of the Western Cape, you will see wind farms and also the solar panels all over the place, making sure that people, especially in rural areas, do get connected using those renewable energy forms.
I want us to answer Temba's question, if you remember Temba who called us earlier. For people who are coming up with such initiatives, abaqhamuka namaphulo amahle kanjalo ukuncedisana norhulumente nengxaki esijongene nayo singabemi boMzantsi Afrika. Nithini nina ningu-Eskom xa bethi baza kuni and anibavuleli ngcango?
Yeah, Ubutemba, as we were saying, the people like Yena and others should also remember that Tina SSCOM, we are not gatekeepers or anything. We do support renewable programs that people are coming up with.
Are you open to partnership?
What we are doing as ESCOM is people obviously apply to the energy department and they also get licenses and things like that. Once everything has been completed, then they come to us to get connected to the national grid. In other words, you'll build something, maybe say for example in Northern Cape, sort of very far from the national grid. So for you to get connected or to supply electricity to everyone else, obviously you need to be connected to someone who has the ability to send it through to people. That is us as ESCOM. So, and we have signed a number of deals, I can tell you that much, that we have signed over 18 agreements with other companies that are going to sell renewable energy to us. And then obviously we distribute to everyone else.
In your distribution, what are your target areas? You must have target areas, I assume. Do you perhaps look at indawo ezingenambani ezichaphazeleka kakhulu i-load shedding okanye nivele nje nithumele abantu bazibonele?
It's two fronts. Remember, e-government, from its side, they will target and say that we want to electrify a particular village somewhere, maybe say in the Eastern Cape. Obviously, they'll do that, Bona, and then electrify and connect those people within the village. Mara, you also have people who are doing solar projects or any other renewable energy projects for commercial purposes. Those ones, Bonangiti, they want to generate a lot and then send it to ESCOM through our transmission lines so that they can send to everyone else in South Africa. So basically it's two fronts. So government Bona particularly, they are looking at electrifying people who do not have access to electricity at the moment. Others are generating so that they can sell, and those are commercial ones. So those ones are the ones where we are signing these long-term agreements, and then we distribute to everyone else.
Okay, let's quickly take Bongeni in KZN. Bongeni, are you there?
Ngikhona futhi kunjani?
Sikhona mhlekaza khona kunjani kuwe?
Ngiphile kakhulu umbongeni Molo Maseko edungu ezibomvu. Umbuzo wami ulapha nginembuzo emibili two mhlanje ngingqamlela ngoba kuyashesha. Number 1, benziwa yini ukuthi benganothisi kokunye uma mhlambe kuukuthi bazowuthatha ugesi asizukuba nawo abezukuba nawo ugesi. Okokuqala lokho.
Okay.
Ngoba ukufike la endaweni ukuthi ugesi awukho kokunye kuyanothisa kokunye inganothisa. Okay, right. Okwesibili mina ugesi anginawo la eyibovu. Manje baduriswa yini? Umbuzo wami baduriswa yini ngoba ngeke ngathi ngithi ngifuna ukudonsa ugesi la ekhaya. Indawanyana nje encane kwamakhelwane ukhona. Ngiyacabanga boma 113 meter ukuya kwamakhelwane. Kodwa bangibiza imali engango 23,000. Manje ke ngicela ukuthi akangi-antarishele lapho nje kubhuti ngingathokoza kakhulu uMolo Maseko edumbe bovu ngiyabonga.
Siyabulela kakhulu mhlekazi. There seems to be this general problem, it's generic actually. This is not the first caller who says you don't notify abantu xa nisawuthatha umbane or xa kuzama kumbane. You're saying whose responsibility is that? We need clarity on that so that abantu xa becomplain they know who to go to. Can you just touch briefly on that? And the second one definitely is about the supply of electricity, which it seems like you have ridiculous costs implications when one wants to run through electricity. But let's touch firstly on the first one. Who's responsible?
Ngiyabonga ngombuzo wakho Mbongeni. We like to mention Baba ukuthi for people in the rural areas, for example, we're starting with the second question. People in rural areas, it's very expensive, I must tell you, SPO, to sort of get a connection to Bona. In an urban settlement, it's relatively easy because everything is within one place. So it's relatively easy to connect electricity to people who already are within one place, and it's going to be relatively cheaper. But in rural areas, sometimes you find one person in the whole village, maybe of 500 people, only one household will apply, and as a result, we as a company will have to connect these people from our connecting point, and maybe it will be maybe say 100 kilometers or whatever to where they are, and obviously it's cost on our side. So sometimes that's why you have all those issues. But we also want to mention in relation to ama power interruptions and things, and people not being told. If when you are an Eskom customer, we like to ni phone a customer center yet, which is 0800 375
66.
So if you're an Eskom customer, ufonela le number leyo bazokutshela ukuthi what the issues are and what time are we going to try to restore power. But if you're a municipal customer, then you have to call your electricity supply within your region to tell you what is going on and the plans going forward.
All right, let's go to Ryan in Cape Town. Ryan, one of our callers actually spoke about the solar system being very affordable and very efficient. Just touch briefly on that, because earlier on you had elaborated, but briefly, but just tell us about the accessibility of this solar program and how consumers can find it, or how they can access it rather.
Okay, so I think we need to make a distinction. You obviously have, on the one hand, you have a solar farm, and on the other hand, you have portable solar power. So that's quite an interesting distinction.
Just clarify that, please.
The solar farm will obviously feed back into a grid, or Eskom, for example, would buy the power made by a solar farm, etc., and then feed an existing grid. That doesn't solve the problem of power lines being stolen and various other issues that people are complaining about. On the other hand, then you have portable solar power, which is an independent system, so you're not reliant on any grid. So if you make those two distinctions and you're reliant on, say, portable solar power, or your house is solar powered and it's self-sustaining, you don't have the problems. For example, the caller saying, well, why isn't Eskom notifying us, or why aren't the municipalities notifying us? My question is, once they do notify you, what are you going to do? Then you have to rely on alternatives, for example, kerosene, candles, if you're lucky, a generator, for example. That's going to incur costs. That's diesel. You have to fetch it. You have to maintain the generator. So the question is not, you didn't notify us. Well, what's the alternative? And the alternative is an important thing to discuss, because the alternative is, if you have portable power, or if you do have a home that is solar powered as opposed to relying on the energy for a grid, you're self-sufficient. You don't have to worry about them not notifying you, and you don't have to run around and get kerosene, which, by the way, is very dangerous, not only from an inhalation point of view, but it was touched on earlier, you get a lot of fires. So the kerosene lamp gets knocked over, and you can literally wipe out 10s, 20s, 30, 40 shacks at a time. So it's a hazard. So when power goes down, all these things come into play. And I think it's important that, and this is a question I have as well, why is Eskom not, for example, allowing households in metropole areas and outside to feed back into the grid? That's something that, in my opinion, should have been done a long time ago. That then adds a lot of... It's an incentive for people to purchase solar power. It's an incentive for people to go green. It's going to relieve a lot of stress on the grid, because people do have money to buy solar power. As I mentioned before, it's not as expensive as people think. You start with a small system. A small light can be as little as 300-400 rand, and a system for our house could be, say, 100,000 rand, for argument's sake.
All right.
And that money is obviously earned back, and it's free, etc., etc. So I'm very confused as to why people are not, at this stage, who already have existing solar houses, why are they not able to feed back into the grid already, for example?
All right, Ryan, we're going to talk briefly or more intensively about that after the break, about their accessibility, basically, because also Eskom, they're telling us about the solar system. But for a consumer at home, for somebody who's watching at home, we need to make sure that we give them a clear option of where they can access these services. Let's quickly go for a short break. Just to remind you that we're taking your messages on our Twitter and Facebook page. We'll be back straight after this. Welcome to our last segment as we continue with our discussion. Before the break, we had Ryan, who was basically telling us about the solar system. Ryan, just to wrap up quickly about the solar system and the benefits and basically the accessibility to the consumers watching at home.
Okay. Yes, look, I think in conclusion, it's important to educate the consumers. I think solar power is very misunderstood, and I think it's a responsibility of companies such as ourselves, Eskom, as well as the government, to educate people that there is an alternative to the grid, however reliable or unreliable that may be, that you don't need to be informed that you'll have power outages, that you can actually be self-sufficient. It is affordable, you know, it's safe, it's renewable, it's reliable, and then you take power back into your own hands. And I think that's important. And that message needs to go out. There needs to be a campaign to educate, you know, the consumer in the rural area as well as those living in the metropole area that solar isn't difficult to understand. You know, it is reliable. And I think that's very important. And I think money should be spent on educating the consumers so that they do have a choice at the end of the day on which resource they want to purchase.
All right. Thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us for today's discussion. Unfortunately, rather, that's all we had with you. But in the Johannesburg studio, basically, we're going to give a consumer shortly, briefly, what they can do, the solutions of the solar system and the accessibility that Ryan was touching on. But from your side, initiative, we know that you've touched on the solar initiative as well. But what can you tell the consumer who's at home? What can they do to keep warm this winter? Shortly.
Thanks a lot, Spiro. So some of the things that people can do at home, firstly to save electricity, but also to ensure that they use it efficiently. Things like when you go back to at home this evening, in some places like Johannesburg, for example, it's not that cold as yet. So when you get there, you can basically, one of the things you can do is to delay the switch on of your heater, and some people when they cook as Piwe, they use the stoves to boil the water. Those are some of the things that are wasteful. So instead of using a kettle, some people use the stove. So those are some of the small things that people can do to firstly save electricity, but also to ensure that they do not have high bills at the end of the month.
Oh, well, Kolu, thank you so much for joining us for today's discussion on this power outages. Well, right there at home, hopefully you had it or you got the solutions that you are looking for. If not, you can still touch our Facebook page and drop your ideas, basically, and some of the initiatives, as I've said, that you have in your communities. Sifike ke esiphelweni senkqubo yethu namhlanje ngenxa yexesha. Ukhumbule ke ungakwazi ufumane our repeats on Mondays at 10 on SABC1. Sibulele ke our studio guests, to thank Ryan, who's in Cape Town, and also Kulu, who was with me right here in studio. Well, that's it for this week. Join Alicia next week for another consumer-related topic. From me, Spio Ganzaumbi. Till next time, God bless, be good, and be safe.
Yilungelo Lakho.